You are listening to WTUZ Radio Podcast. Welcome to WTUZ Radio. I am your host, Rhonda, and the podcast we're going to discuss today. Now, if you are a listener on Truth Uncompromised show, you know that I refer to Anon, and I have to be careful because this will get severely censored. So you know I refer to Anon as QLMNOP and M. Okay, so this podcast is QLMNOP. Now I know it's supposed to be QLMNOP, but I'm country. So QLMNOP and M ran a PsyOps. Okay, so those of you that are in the quote, quote, conscious community, and we are going to do a podcast on that, a future podcast on the conscious community as well. A lot of folks in the conscious community picked up a lot of the truthers' ideology, as well as the who they should have been picking up is the preppers, but that's another story. They didn't pick up what the preppers were talking about, but they certainly picked up a lot of the ideology from the truthers and I'm trying to think of the other group, and the sovereign community. All right. Literally, they picked up the ideology from both of these groups. So let's start out with just the definition of what Psy Ops means. Okay, so Psy Ops stands for psychological operations. Okay, so we're going to start with Wikipedia. Psychological operations, PsyOps, are operations to convey selected information and indicators to audiences to influence their emotions, motives, and objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of governments, organizations, groups, and individuals. The purpose of the United States psychological operations is to include or reinforce behavior favorable to U.S. objectives. Now, this isn't Rhonda making this up, y'all. I'm straight reading this off of Wikipedia, who does their own censoring, their own versioning of censoring also. All right? So the definition that they allowed to go through on Wikipedia is even saying that within the U.S., they are an important part of the range of diplomatic, informational, military, and economic activities available to the U.S. They can be utilized during both peaceful times or peace times and conflict. There are three main types: strategic, operational, and tactical. Strategic PsyOps includes informational activities conducted by the U.S. government agencies outside of the military arena through many utilized Department of Defense assets. Operational PsyOps are conducted across the range of military operations, including during peacetime in a defined operational area to promote the effectiveness of the joint force commanders' campaigns and strategies. Tactical Tactical PsyOps are conducted in the area assigned to tactical commander across the range of military operations to support the tactical mission against opposing forces. PsyOps can encourage popular discontent with the opposition's leadership, and by combining persuasion with the credible threat, degrade an adversary's ability to conduct or sustain military operations. They can also disrupt, confuse, and protract the adversary's decision-making process, undermining command and control. When properly employed, PsyOps have the potential to save the lives of friendly or enemy forces by reducing the adversary's will to fight. By lowering the adversary's morale and then its efficiency, PsyOps can also discourage aggressive actions by creating disaffection within their ranks, ultimately leading to surrender. Okay, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can certainly go read that yourself. So again, PsyOps is short for psychological operations. And according to Wikipedia definition, PsyOps are operations to convey selected information and indicators to audiences, to influence their emotions, motives, and objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of government, organization, groups, and individuals. All right? So let's get to the etymology of the word psychological. All right? Because I'm trying to build up, I want you all to see how Q and QLMNOP was nothing but a PsyOps. A PsyOps that was set up to counteract what was going on with the small, quote, quote, conscious community, truther community, and that sovereign community. And even the preppers, because even the folks called the preppers, the ones that were preparing for the end of the world, even they took on the ideology of the other groups as well. I'm not too much sure about them taking on the conscious communities ideology, but most certainly they took on the sovereign communities ideas or ideology, as well as the truthers. Okay, so let's go to the etymology of the word psychological. So the in an adjective perspective, psychological, it is saying moment of immediate expectations of something about to happen. The original German phrase, misinterpreted by the French and imported together with its false sense into English, meant the psychic factor, the mental effect, the influence exerted by a state of mind and not a point of time. All right. So German corresponding to our momentum, not moment. Okay. All right. So just to give you a content of the etymology of psychological. So even, and we should know that psychological is dealing with the mental. All right. Okay. So now that we got the definition stuff out the way, let me get into my opening statements of how I feel about this. I was always against, I never bought into, and will never buy into any of the Anon, the QLMNOP NIM, XYZ NIM. I never believed it. I always felt it was a PsyOps. To listen to this episode in its entirety, go to anchor.fm/WTUZ Radio. Again, that's anchor.fm/WTUZ Radio. And the link is in the description. Thank you, and peace and love.